Well, we got to get this going, get things done. And let's get it out. Yep. Hey, celery's getting a little bit limp. Surely it is. We got to do something about that. Save our celery. Oh, hello there, friends and family. So good to see you back in the country kitchen again today. Snuck back in on me. Gracie must be napping. Yeah, I'll have to talk to her about that later. But since you're here, I wanted to show you something. Something that'll come in quite important if you have the same problems I have with celery. And what I'm going to be showing you today is two different methods. One is the most widely accepted method that you've probably seen 1,000 times. I know I have. On TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and even YouTube. And I've done it too. But is it the ultimate way to make your celery last to the very last day? Now, you've seen me use celery that was over 2 months old and still firm and crispy. But like I said, to show you the ultimate way, I've got to show you the most accepted way. And I'm going to tell you why and show you why it's not the ultimate way. And then I'll show you the ultimate way, which is really based on wisdom from my great-grandparents and my grandparents and even my parents. Little did I know, they knew what they were talking about and what they were doing. So hey, stay with me and let me show you the fallacies and the truth behind making your celery go to the very last day, a couple of months or more down the road. Okay? So like I said, to understand the best way to save your celery to the very last stalk, you have to understand the most accepted way that we've all been shown hundreds of times, regardless of the platform. So let's take a quick look at it, okay? So yeah, as you know, it includes Reynolds wrap or aluminum foil. And what they tell you is they tell you that, first of all, as you well know, all vegetables and fruits produce ethylene gas. Well, that's where I started to have a little problem with this method. It took me a few years, but being an engineer, highly analytical and curious, started to wear on me. Because why? By doing it this way, and I'm guilty of doing it too, I would eventually, being a single person, and sometimes I don't use as much celery as I thought I would unwrap it. It wouldn't be quite the way I wanted it. So, what they tell you to do is, take some aluminum foil. I'm not big on aluminum foil anymore because it's a heavy metal. Not so good for your mental health. You can look all that up. So they say, one of the reasons that you want to do this is because celery produces ethylene gas. But does it really? And that's where I started to have my doubts. And granted, it took a while for me to realize that maybe that wasn't true. Now I'll show you in a minute whether that's actually true or not. So they also say, because it's in the plastic bag, it's not allowing the ethylene gas from the celery to escape. But then they tell you to remove it, which we'll do right now. And there it is. And then they say, because it's not allowing it to escape from that plastic bag, which you did see it was open-ended, right? Now granted, if you're getting those celery hearts, they're all sealed in plastic. But they're not celery hearts, but that's for a whole nother video. So we got it tightly wrapped we're going to close up the end. You know, just pretend we just bought this. My celery, or what's left of it here, was actually bought on January the 30th, and now it's February the 3rd. So it's a little long in the tooth. So here we got it. So that's supposed to allow the ethylene gas to escape better in the plastic bag. I can't believe it took me a few years to understand that this open plastic bag probably was letting the ethylene gas, if indeed the celery produced it, to escape far better than my tightly wrapped celery. But then another reason they say for this method is celery is highly sensitive to ethylene gas. Now that part is true. It is. And all your leafy greens are highly sensitive to ethylene gas. So indeed this method does cure that issue, if indeed you've got ethylene producing fruits and vegetables also in your refrigerator. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're putting this in the crisper or some other place in your refrigerator. No. If you've got apples in the fridge or other fruits and vegetables that produce it, then it's all throughout your environment in your fridge. And we'll be going to a site that's going to explain, does indeed celery produce ethylene gas? It will also confirm whether it's sensitive or not to ethylene gas. But another reason that they tell you to do it this way is it keeps it from drying out. Now indeed, because refrigerators are extremely low humidity, we all know that. The lowest humidity you'll ever see in a year is during the winter time. And in certain parts of the country, during the very coldest parts of winter, people actually put pots on the stove of water or on their wood stoves to increase humidity in their homes. You see, cold air condensates out all the moisture during the refrigeration process. Yeah, that's why there's drip pans in refrigerators and freezers, as well as your air conditioners. So we know all that. So that this method actually takes care of that. But what it doesn't do is a few things that you may not know. Is it replacing that moisture? I want you to think about this, because the celery, from the time it's cut to the time you get it through transport, to the time you bring it home, place it in your fridge, and consume it, it is losing moisture. So indeed, this will slow it down. And if you're happy with this method and you use celery fast enough where this method works, then peace, I understand. But for me, just being a little single old man, there are times in my life where I don't use it fast enough, and I'll unwrap it and it'll be all limp. Yes, it will. Which I have a cure for that too, that I'll be showing you as well. But remember, they say it produces ethylene gas. I'm going to show you whether it does or not. They're going to say it's highly sensitive, which I'll agree it does, and I'll show you that as well. But then I'm also going to talk about optimum storage conditions, i.e. temperature and humidity in your fridge. So to do that, we've got to go to a respected site that not only me as an engineer, but so many other engineering students, junior engineers, budding engineers, and even professionals use every day. So hey, we're going to stick this back in the fridge so it'll stay all cool and preserve itself. And let me show you the truth and dispel some myths around celery, and maybe some of the other things you didn't know about your vegetable storage too. So to know the actual facts from the fiction and the internet myths, we got to come to a respected site, one you may not be aware of, but for any of your questions, come to the place where engineering students, budding engineers, junior engineers, and even professionals like I rely on here on the internet. And what would that be? That would be the engineeringtoolbox.com. And just so happens, because there are many engineers involved not only in residential and commercial refrigeration, i.e. which protects your vegetables, not only in storage but in transit, we need to know the facts to manufacture, design, and produce the methods that keep your veggies and your fruits in their prime optimum conditions to ensure the nutritional value and quality before they reach you, the consumer. It just so happens they have a nice chart or spreadsheet that shows you the proper storage conditions, the temperature and humidity that are required to maximize storage life and maintain quality of harvested fruits and vegetables. Fresh fruit needing low temperature and high relative humidity to reduce the respiration. Now I want you to remember that word respiration, because we're going to visit the site to talk about that in regards to our celery. And slow down the metabolic process, another very key word. The table below indicates optimal temperatures, moisture conditions for some common fruits and vegetables. Not all, but many. And, like always, I will link this site in the description below the video, so you can review it and maybe save it for future reference. But what we're talking about today, of course, is celery. And we're going to answer a few facts. Now you'll understand here on the heading, it gives you the product, which is the fruit or vegetable in question, optimal storage temperature, quite important, the chill point, the freezing point, optimum humidity, whether it can be top ice accepted or not, water sprinkle accepted, whether it produces ethylene, see, ethylene production, and sensitive to ethylene and approximate storage life. And then some comments. But what we're going to look at first to answer the question, because so many videos say, indeed celery produces ethylene gas, let's scroll down. And we're going to find celery. And right here we have it. So let's see. Celery. Optimum storage temperature is 32. Yeah, well you say, well it'll freeze. Yeah, we all know water freezes at 32. But celery freezes at 31.1. We studied it. It needs to be at a 98 to 100% humidity. You know, that's to keep it from drying out, which our fridges are way below that. And top ice accepted? Yes. You can ice it down during transit and even in your stores. Then we look at water sprinkler accepted. Yes, it'll do fine. That actually rehydrates it or keeps it rehydrated. And then the number 8th column is whether it produces ethylene gas or not. And oh, what do we see? No. So those videos that tell you indeed all fruits and vegetables produce ethylene gas, that's not quite the case. And if you look down through this or preview it and review it, you'll see not all fruits and vegetables produce ethylene gas, and you might be enlightened. But over here in the 9th column is whether it's sensitive to ethylene or not. And you can see yes. And then lastly, optimum storage time, 2 to 3 months. Are you getting 2 to 3 months out of your celery wrapped in foil? Yeah, it may not go all brown and that, but I'm sure after 2 to 3 months it's limp like I found mine. And like all leafy greens and that, if you look down through here, you'll find that they too do not produce ethylene gas. but are highly sensitive to it. So indeed, the foil wrapping method, okay, it doesn't solve the fact that it produces ethylene gas, because it doesn't. Celery doesn't produce ethylene gas. But it does protect it being tightly wrapped from ethylene gas if indeed you have ethylene gas producers also stored in your refrigerator, like certain fruits and other vegetables, which I might add, you might be highly enlightened as to which ones do, which ones don't, which ones have a very low ethylene production, and which ones have a high. Of course, we all know apples, because we've all been told you want to ripen something faster, drop in an apple. But anyway, this is where you go, and this proves that indeed celery does not produce ethylene gas, but is highly sensitive. So the wrapping in foil covers that issue. It protects it. If indeed you have any ethylene producing fruits or veggies in your fridge. Engineers need to know that, as you do too, if you're trying to get the longest time in life out of your celery. But there's another thing we need to look at about celery. So now we have to go to one more website to know the final piece of the puzzle to make your celery last virtually forever. So let's go there next. So here we are at the last of the two sites, eOrganic, and we're going to talk about something that you may not know, and that's called respiration and ethylene and their relationship to post-harvest handling. And I'm not going to talk about it in great detail. What I am going to talk about it is what I'm going to highlight right here. Respiration. Yep. See, what you don't know, or what you might not know, or you didn't understand, was that your celery, from the time it's cut, to the time it's packaged, to the time it's in your stores, and to the time you receive it, it's actually a living organism. It's still carrying on its functions. It's still breathing. It's still alive. And let's read this right quick, right here. Respiration. Despite having been detached from the plant, fruits and vegetables remain as a living organs after harvest. Like all living tissues, harvested produce continues to respire. That's breathe, folks, throughout its post-harvest life. During the process of respiration, carbohydrates are broken down to their constituent parts to produce energy and run cellular processes, thus keeping the cells and organisms alive. Understand, celery doesn't ripen, it ages. In fact, without certain things, it's actually dying in your fridge or on your store shelves. Throughout this process, oxygen is consumed. It's still breathing. That's why wrapping it up in the celery doesn't keep it from becoming limp and wilted. So yes, it's still breathing. Oxygen is consumed, and water, carbon dioxide, and energy are released. Because this process occurs from harvest to table, the carbohydrates stored in the harvested plant portion are continually burned. See, it's trying to stay alive as energy to keep the vegetable alive. As respiration continues, compounds that affect plant flavor, sweetness, weight, turgor, which is water content, and nutritional value are lost. Thus reducing the rate of respiration is an important consideration in extending the post-harvest life. And that's all you need to know. And that's why what I'm about to show you next is the ultimate way to preserve your celery to the very last day. So stay tuned, folks. I hope you're learning something, because I learned it through my research too. So let's look at the optimal way, the ultimate way to make your celery last to the last day. So now that we dispelled the myths and presented the facts to you from engineering.com and eOrganics, and you now know celery does not produce ethylene gas, but it is highly sensitive. That's why that wrapping it tightly in foil. If indeed you have ethylene producing fruits and veggies in your refrigerator too, will make it last a little longer. But it doesn't keep it from becoming limp and wilted. Because, one, it's still a living organism. It's still breathing. It's still consuming water. So it's dehydrating. Yeah. Let me show you what you need to make it last forever almost, if you keep attention to it. So what you're going to need is some type of container. I have a Coke mug here. It's the largest container I have. And I've filled it with about 1/3 of the way of filtered water. I also have a Ziploc bag as well. Of course, this is a cutting board and a knife, because we're going to trim our celery on both ends. So this is going to cover the fact that it still needs water because it's still alive to stay hydrated and continue its metabolic process. And the Ziploc is going to keep it from drying out from the low humidity in your fridge. So let me get out my celery and let's get it rescued from its entombment in the aluminum foil. Okay? So here we have our celery. Yep. Still entombed in the foil, which supposedly lets it breathe because it produces ethylene gas. I've already showed you it don't. But it does protect it from ethylene gas should we have fruit and vegetables in the fridge that produce it, which I don't. And it will keep it from drying out, but it doesn't address the fact that it needs moisture or water because it's a living organism. So we're going to get it out. And the first thing we're going to do, because you can see some of the ends are brown, we don't want that. So we're going to chop those off right there. And we got our old compost bag like we always do. And we're going to take that, put on in there. Now, if you don't mind, you can use that for stock. Feed it to your chickens or whatever. Now, there are a few stalks that are less than optimum on the outside. And I need to take them off anyway because they won't fit in my glass that I'm going to be using. But I'm not going to throw them away because I'm going to show you another way that our mothers and grandmothers would also do with celery that they would later put on the dinner table or as an appetizer or a treat. You know, celery sticks with carrot sticks and all that nonsense. So we're just going to place them over there. Whew. So the first thing we're going to do, we'll cut the top off. Now we're going to get down to the root end. See the root end? And you're going to see it's already started, because this is about 33 days old. It's got a root there. And you know, you've all seen the supposed celery hacks. You cut the end off, place it in a little water, it starts to develop roots, or you just stick it in the ground, keep it moist, and it grows. Well, that's a fact. And that should have told you that your celery is still alive. You probably didn't think about that, did you? But we're going to take that and we're going to cut it right off. But we're not going to throw it away. No, we're going to stick it out in the soil. It's already got its little root right there. You see that right there? And what will happen is out of the center, out of the heart, it'll start growing a new celery plant. Yeah, you should have known. It was alive all the time. But now we got it trimmed. We got it cut down where it will fit in our container. Now if you got a bigger container, you won't have to strip out the outer stalks. So all we're going to do is we're going to place them in the container. So now we've solved the issue about the fact that it is alive and it still needs water to stay alive and continue its metabolic process without consuming its own internal moisture and carbohydrates. Now, to address the fact that the refrigerator is low humidity and this is respiring, yep, it's breathing, so it's consuming oxygen, it's giving off carbon dioxide, plus it's losing water content through the respiration process. And even more, if you place it in the fridge, which is a low humidity environment, and even your crispers. And I'll show you my refrigerator temperature and humidity here in a minute, because I just happen to have a remote temperature sensor in my fridge. So the next thing you want to do to reduce that loss of moisture, and that is you want to take that Ziploc bag, put over the top, right down over. Now you could do this with saran wrap. Now notice it's not totally sealed. See, I don't want to suffocate my celery. I want it still to be able to breathe, still get oxygen, still release carbon dioxide. Yeah. Plus, it's not sealed off to the point where, because it's in a high humidity environment now with the water, that it's going to get all moldy, you know, as you may have experienced if you put it in foil. And it's not going to get limp. And if it makes you happy, you can tighten it up a little bit. And there you go. Now it's ready for the fridge. We've cut off our end to grow more. We got this saved. And I'll tell you this. This method is how. Like in my last cooking video that I used celery that was over 2 months old. And my celery was still firm, still crisp. Yeah, you saw it. You lived it like I did. This is the ultimate way to save your celery in the fridge. But let me get this back in the fridge where it'll be all happy, okay? So we got our celery back in the fridge. It's all happy. But we got these pieces right here. Yep, and they ain't looking too great. Let me give them a little wash and we'll come back. Okay? But we're going to trim off some of the more crusty parts first. You know, down there. And something you might notice, if you are buying the open-ended package of celery and wonder why there's still dirt on it and all that, it's not pristine and clean. It's actually bagged after it's cut in the field. As the harvester goes through, people are actually cutting it, placing it on a belt. It's actually bagged right there. Yep, it sure is. Before it's packed in totes and sent on to the refrigeration and then on the trucks. We're going to give it a quick cut right there. Yep, it's looking pretty rough. We're not going to be able to save a whole bunch. But what we can save is some of it. it's not looking too bad. And that's okay, because I love celery sticks with canned cheese, or grated cheese, or even peanut butter. Now these that don't look so prime, what are we going to do with them? Well, the fact that they don't look so prime, we don't care. Because we're just going to give them a quick chop. And we're going to save them in a freezer bag for stock. Because it just don't matter. Don't throw a bit away. Don't be scared to do so. But let me get a container and I'll show you what you probably saw your mother and your grandmother do when they got celery and prepped it for the dinner table or the appetizer buffet. So we'll take a minute here to just throw the less than desirable celery for stock later in a Ziploc bag. We're just going to toss it in the freezer. See? To make stock. It'll be okay. Let me get that in the freezer. We'll come back. So what I've done now, got me a little plastic dish. And it ain't much. I've got a few pieces of celery here that was saved. They were looking a little fine. And later on this evening, as I'm watching YouTube, I can enjoy these celery sticks with maybe some cheese, peanut butter, or what have you. So I'm just going to slice them down the middle. Yep. Just like that. And hey, come on. You remember your mother and grandmother doing this. There we go. And then they'd plop them in a bowl or container, just like that. Now what did they do? And if indeed they are a little limp and wilted, this will help them out too. So let me show you. Now you might hear the water's running. Yep. But I'll show you why. Now I'm not going to tote you all around. Y'all way too heavy. So what have I done? Simple. And you know you've done this probably too. Maybe not anymore, because you might have forgotten. I placed them in a little water. That's going to rehydrate those celery sticks, just like putting the remainder of the celery stalk in the glass with the water. And then I'm just going to put the lid on. And then I'm going to put them in the fridge and chill them. And later on tonight, while I'm watching my favorite YouTube channel, I can enjoy these, like I said, with some canned cheese. I don't care if you love it or hate it. I do. And maybe a few with some peanut butter too. You know, the creamy kind. From Walmart, great value. Or maybe Jif or Skippy too. Oh yeah. High in fiber. And if you don't know the benefits of celery, and you think it's all about fiber and water, you might want to look up the benefits of celery. You might be highly surprised. It's a little bit more than you thought it was. So there you have it. Now you know the facts. We have dispelled the myths and the urban legends. And I've showed you the ultimate way to store your celery. From the very time you get it till several months away. And I've had celery last for 3 to 4 months or more, doing it the way I just showed you. It stays crispy. It's not limpy. It's not deteriorated. It doesn't grow mold, which it will eventually get limpy, and it will grow mold, because mold loves what? high humidity and darkness, which the foil all does. So y'all, well, friends and family, like I say, hope you learned something. Hope it might be educational or informative. And whether you agree or disagree, try it sometime. Yeah, and if you're a single person or only two of you, but you love to keep celery on hand, but you never can seem to make it last until the very last stalk, try this method. Guarantee it. It will last. So, till you know the kitty crew. You know them all. Spooky, Speedy, Cleo, old Mr. Gray, sometimes Heathcliff, and little Gracie too. See you on that next video. Goodbye for now. Now I gotta go out and plant my celery bottom. And I'm hungry. I may eat these few celery sticks now. No, I'm gonna wait till later. Maybe I'll watch Mama Cat's latest video or another. And just for those of you who stayed to this end, you can see right here, I place a remote thermometer in my fridge, and it's telling me right now, it's at 36.7 degrees. Look it up, it's vital. But look at the humidity, 39%. Yeah, so all of that tells you why my method, which was my mother's and my grandparents' method, is the best and the ultimate way to keep your celery alive to the last day. Later on.